Hello.
You're good to go.
Sweet. Here we are. Welcome to the concrete5 Town Hall. It's been another month. Man, it goes fast. But we got a bunch of stuff to talk about, so I'm going to jump right into it. Actually, let me share my screen if I can. Oh, okay. Yeah, don't show me those tips. That's the one over there I want to share. Sweet. I want to start this month by taking a little time to thank all the people who help us. This is the Karma Leaderboard, which you can find on concrete5.org. If you haven't been there, it's a little buried, but you can get there. These are all the folks who have been doing stuff to help one another in the community, promote the project outside of concrete5, and actually work on the core. And you're going to see some names that you probably hear every month. M. Clay, John the Fish, M. Locati, heroes of the concrete5 space. Spares, he's got some cool add-ons. Putman, been around forever and a day. Fabian, of course, you heard from last month, did a demo of some very cool stuff that he's building that kind of feels like PHP on my admin inside of concrete5. So really exciting. And then sometimes you find people who I have never heard of before. I don't know who Page Kicks is, and admin Gwen, that's a new one. The entire city of St. Louis apparently is in here promoting the project, so appreciate their efforts. Every week we give away some free add-on licenses to the folks who are in this kind of randomly pulled from the top 10 as long as you didn't win the last month. So this last week it was Gondwana, Robert Bout, and Fabian Bitter, who all won licenses of add-ons to play around with. So that's very nice. But deep down, we just want to say thank you very much to all the people who help us do what we do here. concrete5 wouldn't be anything but a little bit of a code base that Andy and I use on some commercial projects without all of you. So thank you very much. I know you've got a list here as well of some GitHub testers that have really been helping you with 5.2 or 8.5.2 RC2. Andy, do you want to?
Yeah, I do. I just have a couple to call out this time around since the last show. You're right, it does go fast. concrete5 Japan continues to kill it. They are definitely the most active at reporting bugs, especially those that affect the release candidate, which is always appreciated. A new name coming in GitHub this time who I've not seen before, but has been really reporting a lot of valid things over the last couple days is Yumina Kazawa. So thank you so much for all of that. And yeah, we are making a lot of good progress on 8.5.2. The issues are slowing down noticeably. So expect to see a release for that very, very soon.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I know Mr. Mike Larson, you wanted to thank for licenses, prompting you to...
Hello. We lost Mike.
We lost Mike off to other things. Well, I will speak for Mike. Thank you, Noor M. Calais, for donating 10 licenses of 2 of your new add-ons. Very much appreciate having good stuff in the giveaway pile. So if you are a third-party developer making licenses and you want to get them in front of some concrete5 players, this is a great way to kind of get noticed. I just mentioned this awesome instant page speed magic add-on a couple of times because it was given away as a prize. And let's take a quick look at that. Well, that's made by Noor. Thank you there. And it looks like it's an all-in-one solution to minify your page content. So nice. That's pretty cool. Plus, it's got this big A here. Like, good docs. At least a fair amount of content there. It's nice. Which is a wonderful segue to Andy's feverish documentation efforts. He's been typing like nobody's business. Andy does type very fast, usually on a loud keyboard, and producing massive documentation that we're all eager to post this. You want to speak to any of that, Andy?
Sure. Yeah, I had a for years an Apple Bluetooth keyboard that was very, very low profile, very silent, and perhaps in knowing what was coming, it decided to die about 3 weeks ago. So I've replaced it with a horrendous gamer keyboard that is not, as loud as the DOS keyboard, but is it can take a beating. So that's good for the efficiency of the doc writing. Things are going well with that. We did a lot of work on this new building websites with concrete5 section that's going to be launching soon to the documentation site. Our tentative timeline for that is to have those docs up by next town hall, which is aggressive, but we got to be aggressive. And then in the meantime, we're going to be overhauling the docs site. Not as much the content until the new section launches, but trying to make it, trying to surface some of the things that we have documentation-wise that we don't necessarily link to on our docs site. We kind of just dive right into the big tree of docs, whether it's from the editor's perspective or the developer's perspective. And we don't have any links to our videos. We don't do a great job at cross-linking our tutorials, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what we're going to be focused on for the rest of this week. So you can look forward to seeing some improvements to the documentation site coming very soon. And fully new docs section next month. So nice. Things are going. Yeah, very exciting.
Talking about it for have that kind of interim level, not the details, not just broad strokes, but how do I actually attack problems with concrete5? And last time I checked in, you're how many thousand words into this thing now?
22.
Okay.
Yeah. Alrighty. So when we get a solid 30, we'll call it done.
Need extra binding on the printout. That's cool. And I know we've been talking about this for a couple of months. As with most things, always takes longer than you would have hoped. But I think good things come to those who wait, and we are wrapping it up. So look forward to that whole new building with concrete5. And then that will inform a revisit to our certification, which right now is kind of stuck at kind of user certification. And we haven't done hey, here's how you should build stuff with concrete5 certification in quite some time. So once these docs come out, it'll be much easier for us to go back and kind of do some more thinking around, well, what kind of kind of tests and experience can we come up with that is easy enough for folks that actually know concrete5 to get through, so we're not putting a huge onus on you, but also actually, does a little bit of, is a bit of a challenge, right? Because people who are coming to find someone to help themselves with concrete5, like they want somebody who knows what they're doing. So that is on the radar as well. And that's what I know about that. Let me see. I know you're mixing this there, Corbin. Can you mix back to my screen share? Maybe?
Yep.
I'm assuming that's a yes. So was going through the showcase on concrete5.org to find something cool built with concrete5 to show off for this town hall, because I think that's an important thing to do every month. I know when I talk to prospective clients, they're very visually focused, right? I can show them in context editing. I can talk about advanced permissions and all this stuff. And then they always kind of, after this pause, there's like, yeah, but can I build a site that looks like this? And, we all know the answer is, of course you can. You can build a site that looks like anything you want with concrete5. But I think it's really good to have some sexy sites out in these videos. This I really like, probably because I like music, and I like the idea of going and visiting Czechia. And this is the symphony, or was it the orchestra? What's their official name? Let's not get it wrong, shall we? Well, it's CNSO. It's a very sexy looking Czech National Symphony Orchestra. There we go. So yeah, pretty sexy. These guys look like they're having fun. All sorts of different views and some scrolly excitement that's pretty cool. Darn sexy looking site, built by, fun name, Grenade Castle. I like this site too. Another little agency based in Prague. It's got a cool pixely fire.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. One day I'm going to get back to Europe. I'm going to come visit you guys because this stuff looks sweet. So there you go. Shout out to Grenade Castle and this very sexy site for the Czech Symphony. Well done. We like it. Bravo. Let's see. I think any other kind of general housekeeping news that we want to go through, or shall I jump into what I wanted to show and tell this week? I think I shall.
Yeah, I think we're ready.
Sweet. So I'm gonna fire this bad boy up in full screen mode. Awesome. Hopefully that's working. I want to talk about hosting and what we do for hosting concrete5.org today, how we can do it better, and in broad strokes, how we can win your hosting business back. So, it's probably everybody watching this probably knows we've spent an awful lot of time over the last year and a half building a very complicated FedRAMP ready certified DevOps solution for the U.S. Army around Concrete5. And we have learned an awful lot about how to put cutting edge hosting solutions together. And we want to apply some of that thinking to the concrete5.org rebuild that we are really getting fast and furious on as we get into the end of the year here. So I'm going to take you through kind of our thinking on it with the hopes that you can kind of correct where maybe we're missing something and help us build something really compelling. This is one of my favorite slides. Managing a website ain't easy. So, back when we started Concrete, and it wasn't Concrete5, it was just commercial Concrete. It was me and Andy running a full service interactive media shop. The first version was 2003, which is not that far from 1999. We didn't have Git. I don't think we even had Subversion. We still had CVS, client version of CVS, I guess, and we
did have Subversion. We were never.
Well, when we went open source, we did, but way.
I don't think we ever rolled CVS.
All right. Well, then that gives.
We did have a private
cred.
Subversion server running, heaven knows where, in some closet somewhere. So yeah,
I know in the early days before we were really building software, we were just fixing websites. It was not uncommon for us to be just changing code on a live box, right? You would be messing with some files, and it was really a question of how fast can I FTP these up, right? Leech FTP was a blessing, so it was like, well, this is fast. What else do I need?
Back then, your version control was just putting the date in the file name after the extension. So then
index.html _ Franz.
Easy rollback.
Easy rollback. Yeah. Well, those were heady days. That's 20 years, right? The web has changed and it's grown up, and it's much more like building, software was in the 80s and 90s. Like there's all sorts of different tool sets, and you've got to compile things, and you got to merge them in different ways. And this diagram on the right doesn't actually make sense if you try to follow the arrows. But you know what? Most diagrams at this point don't make sense when you try to follow the arrows. Even a small business website that you might have just dealt with from a cPanel install in the past. More and more, even these smaller sites are dealing with a lot of these different tools, right? Everybody uses Google Analytics, and everybody's depending on JavaScript libraries that don't kill your site. And no, you might not be spinning up instances with Vagrant and Docker for a brochureware site, but you know what? You might if you're hosting hundreds of them. So the ecosystem and the tools for managing a website have changed dramatically in the last couple of decades, which is wonderful. Concrete5 has been around for a while now, and some of the challenges that we believe everybody has with Concrete5, whether you're kind of a site owner that is not a developer just worried about keeping your site running, or you are a hardcore developer at a shop that is worried about keeping thousands of websites moving, everybody shares these three main concerns. You want to be updating the core, and there's certainly different philosophies on how up-to-date you want to be, but if you care about security, you want to somehow stay on the path to be on something close to the latest version. There are no gaping security holes in Concrete5 that I tell you, oh my goodness, you should never be running this version because people can just break your site. but there are lots of little patches that come out. So even if you are not falling over yourself for the newest functionality that we may be rolling out or interface improvements, you should be staying on the update path just for security reasons. Performance is always a concern. Performance has become more and more of a concern as Concrete 5 has become more powerful. I think really the introduction of advanced permissions back with, God, what was that, 5.5, 5.6? One of those.
Yeah, something like that. When we really allowed you to time out your permissions and
Yeah, I
choose
mean,
when
it's
they
so
started. And
beefy. It's insane in there. I would be shocked if really any site is using the permissions model that we built to its fullest. I mean, you can do custom exclusions with timed permissions on specific different types of tasks. Like, it is very, very powerful, which a lot of folks don't even know. But obviously, that's quite a few queries, and so there's just work in keeping a Concrete 5 site performant. There's caching things that you can do. There's architecture choices that you can make. There's certainly the way you configure your web server matters. Thinking back to kind of how it was back in 2008 when we first launched, in the first couple of years, updating the core was something that you would just do from within the core. There's just this hit update button and it would update itself, which always struck me as impressively brazen, but worked great for a long time. Now we would never counsel somebody to do that. We would always say, well, take a backup first, because there's just a lot of changes that are happening. And again, a lot of those changes around a really complicated ecosystem, right? Like these last updates to handle character sets, I think, has cost us dozens, certainly, if not more than 100 hours of back and forth and support and people complaining, hey, this thing bricks when I update it, and just endless pain because of a change that we wanted to support in MySQL to support emoticons in the core. I mean, it's remarkable the challenges that you have as these systems get more and more complicated. And of course, rollback is a challenge, right? Being able to say, hey, I just want to take a copy of the site from yesterday and turn it into today. Like, that's something that perhaps your hosting situation has figured out, perhaps not. It's certainly not built into Concrete 5. And between keeping the thing up to date, keeping it fast, and being able to grab a snapshot, I think these are problems that everybody can enjoy. Hey, come back to your presentation. Woo. There's also problems that are kind of unique to who you are. So if you're a site owner, there's the whole onboarding experience, right? I'm just looking for a website, and we get people every day coming to our site, just clearly kind of evaluating Concrete 5 versus Squarespace. Like, can I set up a website for my business here? And we'll get into some details here in a minute. I don't think we do a tremendous job of kind of holding their hands into, yeah, you can get a website and here's some help with it. We also get people every day who are saying, I've got a Concrete 5 site, the people who built it are gone, or I'm new to the company, I don't really know how it works or what it does. I want, quote unquote support, but they're not sure what that means. How do I improve and add to an existing Concrete 5 site? And then those people, you kind of want to empower them to do things on their own. So how do they find clear answers for best practices? And our user docs aren't bad, but there again, there's this kind of opportunity for like, well, how can I, and can Concrete 5 do this type of stuff? And I often find myself, just helping people realize, like, yeah, you add the document library to that page and you've got a lightweight intranet. Like, there's all sorts of stuff under the hood. So those are things that site owners need. Site builders have similar but somewhat different takes on those needs. They're not looking to easily get a new website, but pretty much all of them are looking to find new clients in one capacity or another. Maybe you're a big shop looking for gigs that start at 50 grand and go up. Maybe you're a freelancer that's perfectly eager to help someone for 2 hours fix something that they just decided they needed, but everybody wants more work in the big picture. Most of us are dealing with a lot of Concrete 5 sites at this point. So how do I keep 100 websites up to date? Or if our agency has a bunch of blocks and add-ons and stuff that we've made that we like, can I put that, how do I deploy that code across all the sites so I always can get my tools or the tools that I want? And there again, am I doing things the right way? So some of the work that Andy is doing with documentation helps speak to that. But kind of unique needs for owners versus builders. And that's what we've come up with, just really taking a step back and thinking about our value proposition and who's coming to our site and what they need and how we can help them. Now I want to look a little bit at what we're actually offering today. And I will preface this by saying, if you host with us, you will know that we do a very good job for you. As a team, we will bend over backwards to make sure that your experience, if you're paying us to host your site, is awesome. Whether you're the Army and you've got a whole team of people doing compliance for you, or you are just hosting a site on one of our shared hosts for $30 a month somewhere. These folks here, Corvin and Andy and Mike and Evan, and they really care, and they're going to do everything that they can to make sure that you have a good experience. However, what we offer as an onboarding experience is less than amazing. So this is, I'm sure you're somewhat familiar with, our simple sites interface. You can, right from the homepage, you click trial, you go here, put in a name. If you are already logged in, you don't have to do this, create a community account, which is nice. And it'll actually spin up a concrete5 site for you super fast. So that part, A plus, like you just kind of watch a video while this thing spins in the background and you get a concrete5 site. The downer is to pull that off, and for strategic reasons that made sense at the time but no longer do, you're kind of getting a crippled version of concrete5 that we can't really do anything with. So you can't install add-ons and themes in there. And yeah, there's a 15-day trial kind of timeout thing. But if you decide, yeah, you want to host it, on our end, we now have a bunch of manual stuff we need to do to kind of get it off of this trial server and into an actual shared hosting environment. And it's super inefficient, which makes us not particularly eager to invest energy in kind of, streamlining or improving it. It just feels like a little dated in its approach, perhaps is the right way to say it. When you actually get into, okay, I want to host, I like the product, thanks for the trial, I want to host somewhere, we will eventually funnel you to something that looks like this. Again, we've been doing this for a day and an age. So this approach made a fair amount of sense in the late zeros, early teens when we first launched it. Like, by and large, is a shared hosting approach. So, I mean, you've got the black level on the right, because of course, if your pockets are deep, we can figure out something that meets your needs. That's pretty much any business. But the more self-service stuff is basically, look, here's a budget host. You can use Softaculous to install concrete5 if you want over there. Good luck. Or you can host with us at a premium for kind of, for shared hosting. But you really are getting like a traditional shared hosting box. Like, we're going to dump you in cPanel. We use WHMCS for our own billing. These products are amazing in what they do, but they really are designed for folks that are running just flexible web space, right? Like, you get all sorts of services that generally people don't expect out of their hosting provider anymore, right? Like, back in the day, I wanted, I need to be able to run email out of it. Like, maybe I'd want to run an email list server. Like, no one's doing that anymore, and I wouldn't want anyone to do that on our box. These days everyone's going to be using Google or some other third-party mail service and just pointing their mail to it. So why are we giving you FTP and SSH access to a web space when really what you're looking for is a safe concrete5 experience that's fast and always works? In this model, we're not going to update your core for you unless you ask us to, and and we're going to charge you for the time, because the sites are all over the board, right? So people have made overrides in the core, they've changed stuff around. By the time we get in there to start fixing things and tinkering with stuff, we've already spent 2 hours just trying to get a sense of the ecosystem. So again, it's not bad. Anybody who is hosting with us knows that you do get very thoughtful answers in a very timely fashion from the people who built concrete5. So that should be valuable. But I think if we bring back the things that people actually need from those slides earlier, universal needs and owner's needs, we're really only crossing off a couple of them with this solution. Our sites tend to be pretty fast. We're not locking down your core directory, so you still could build a inefficient site and stick it on our servers, and it wouldn't be tremendously fast, but we'll worry about it with you. We do have some rollback built into it, but that just comes out of cPanel. So, depending on your plan, that might be nightly or weekly. But it's something you're going to ask us to do. It's not a real graceful, hey, just flip this switch and you have yesterday's site. That's not really, I'm kind of giving us a little bit of a gimme by crossing that one off. We can restore your site, but it's not the simplest ever. And we do offer good answers for people who are using concrete5. We don't honestly have that many of what I believe is you all. I'm assuming that most of the folks watching this video are more on the development side than the site owner side. We don't have a lot of developers that are hosting their sites with us. I think early on, folks were like, well, if it's just cPanel and it's kind of a DIY experience, I can probably save a fair amount of money by just doing this myself. So we want to change that. We have developed an awful lot of expertise in-house around hosting best practices in the last couple of years. We already know concrete5 pretty well, and we're deeply committed to being open source, and we love the fact that people can use concrete5 for all sorts of stuff. But we need to do a better job of being a player in the, hey, I've got a concrete5 site, where should I host it space. So let's talk about what is actually in a concrete5 site, how they are built, what they do. Here is a fine fellow looking for a web page. All these diagrams are tough because there's obviously a lot more moving parts than this. But if you're thinking about really just the stuff that's concrete5 specific, you've got a core directory. So if you look inside of concrete5, when we do a new version, everything in that new version is inside of a subdirectory that is that new version. You plop it into the concrete directory, and that's what's happening underneath the scene. So hypothetically, your core version should be clean, should be, honestly, if you get it off of concrete5.org, it's ISO compliant. In best practices, you shouldn't be touching that. There are ways to override all that. So if you pull a file out, put it in the parent directory, and start changing it, it becomes an override. There's also a model for doing all of your custom code. So that would be your themes, your add-ons, any extensions that you're making to the core, all that stuff. For sake of this diagram, we're going to call custom packages and overrides. You have a bunch of stuff that goes in a MySQL database. That's all your site content. And then you have the site files. That's everything you would manage with the file manager. That's also everything that would be in your theme, kind of the Chrome for your site, all of the images, Word docs, PDFs, all that kind of stuff. All these things get pieced together, not exactly in this order, but whatever, you get the idea. And off they go to the left to this fellow with a really floppy purple hairdo that I didn't really think about when I made this, but he is stoked he got a web page out of concrete5. When we do support on people's sites in the wild, which these days we rarely do because of the overhead involved in just kind of figuring out the system, what we find is very often anarchy across all of these things. Right, things have changed in the core directory that really could have been in overrides, but someone just like, I don't know, I just changed it and it worked. The database, like, how is that configured? I don't know. I guess we've got to start figuring it out. Even something as simple as like, well, are the files in the right spot? Like, yeah, but you can set permissions in different ways on that file system, and that will certainly impact security. By us just saying, look, here's concrete5, do whatever you want with it. That's super cool in terms of open source and people who know what they're doing what they want. But it is also super hard for somebody who just wants things to work and gets frustrated that, hey, this doesn't work right. And I've certainly, run into clients or prospective clients where they're like, concrete5 is, does all this stuff on its own. It's buggy and it's weird and I don't like it. And we start looking at their setup and like, they've overridden stuff. They've got all sorts of weird customizations going on, and their core is unupdatable. And it's like, well, sorry, like I want to help you, but it's just all over the board. When we're hosting concrete5 sites, we tend to do it more like this. So we are always going to lock down our core. we might not be running the absolute latest, greatest version on every site. We might be running a slightly newer than the latest version since we manage the core code base. Sometimes we're building new features out and we're kind of doing, exciting .Andy alpha stuff. But that core directory is going to be locked down. We're not going to put things that are client specific in there. All that's going to be cleaned in a custom packages overrides directory. Really, all of this stuff is where the work's going to happen. This is all going to be managed with Git. There's never going to be anybody SSHing in to tinker with something in here. It's always going to be managed with some kind of dev workflow that is automated. The database is going to be on its own setup. Sometimes with shared hosting, it's all on one box, but generally, as soon as we're getting into something that we're worried about, real performance on, the first step that we'll take is separate the database out. We use Aurora on AWS a lot for this kind of thing now, but let's optimize the database for database performance. That has absolutely nothing to do with PHP and Nginx. In the same vein, we're going to try to push the files out to S3. We would also, again, this diagram doesn't represent everything that we would do by stretch of the imagination. There's probably going to be some content delivery network or caching here. So CloudFront, Cloudflare, or something even beyond S3 that is going to cache the kind of the rendered page before this fine fellow gets a web page. But that web page he's going to get is going to be faster. It's going to be safer when you go to try to update the core. You'll be able to make a stage of all this and kind of drop the new core in much more smoothly. So this is how we would host a great concrete5 site. So the question that we're asking ourselves is, how can we win your hosting business? And I want you guys to, we're going to post this to the community forums, this video, once we get up, and I'm eager to have you guys kind of poke holes in what we're thinking about here and tell us what we can do to get you our expertise and provide some value. As we've been doing wireframes for the new concrete5.org site, we're going through, we're in the kind of my account area, and we ran into the project pages, which today are where you can connect your existing concrete5 site that you've set up somewhere to concrete5.org so you can install licenses. That's really all it's there for. We don't try to promote our hosting through that at all. We just needed some way to do license management, so we made the My Project section. So that got us thinking, well, we should make it easier there to host sites with us if we're going to put the work into making like a really great performant concrete5 cloud, if you will. And so we're thinking something like this. You would have a new project page where you can pick the type of site you want to start with. So today, when you do a simple, this is similar to simple sites, except today with simple sites, you get Elemental with a bunch of sample content. So that's what I would kind of call small services business. A lot of folks just want a blank install. Like I don't want to have to delete the portfolio and all this other stuff. So can I just have a clean concrete5 site? We've seen more and more businesses using concrete5 as an intranet, and much of what they're doing, they just do with the core. In fact, all of what they're doing, they do with the core, except for some single sign-on stuff usually. So we're thinking, hey, we could spend a little time packing up concrete5 in ways that make sense for different kind of use models, if you will. The e-commerce project in GitHub is an interesting one to add to this list in the big picture. We realized in some of our internal discussion that we need to make it really easy to migrate existing sites, because we're hoping that you folks like, hey, I'd rather have Franz and his team worried about keeping this thing up 24/7. Let's migrate some of our existing work into there and take advantages of some of the tools in here. So we're going to have some onboarding flow for, hey, upload a database export and your files directory or whatever, and we'll figure that out. But thinking in the simplest terms, blank, you click it, you give the thing a name, it's going to pop a new concrete5 site up in an overlay window and dump you into a cloud management console. That would look something like this. So this is a long page. I've broken it into a couple of slides. We would show you how your usage is doing, and we would charge you based on that usage, right? More active sites cost more to host. So try to be reasonably fair about that. Just simple things for most of us, just but they just take time. So mapping domains to websites is something that, like, we spend a surprising amount of time having reasonably senior resources map a domain to a site just to do a redirect. So let's build an interface to make that happen. Instances is the interesting part here. So for your project, you would be able to spin up different instances for different needs. So you would always have a live instance, but you might also have a stage that you were working on. You might decide to replicate that stage for a new developer, or replicate that stage so you could test an upgrade on it. Those stages could connect to different branches in your code repo. Backup, this is lower down on the same page. Backup is really another instance just not running live. So we would automatically be making backups nightly. We would also give you the power to say, hey, I want to spin up a backup real quick because I'm about to flip a switch on the live site and I'm not sure what it's going to do. So I'm going to take a snapshot. And I could always come back to this separate site, right? This is all on concrete5.org. So if you brick your site because you've installed some add-on, if you've taken a backup here, we would be able to restore that. You wouldn't have to wait for any support. You would just be able to click a button and make it happen. We still have add-ons and themes. This is really all the project page does today. We have kind of a management team on the project page today. We're going to extend that out into a little bit more powerful roles model, where we kind of reduce the amount of controls that someone might have on this page. So, as an owner, you can do everything, but you could assign a support role that could, perhaps spin up a new stage, but they couldn't get rid of they couldn't destroy anything here. So someone said, hey, I could help you fix that. You could add them to this page and they could do things that were additive, but not destructive. We've also have started talking about having a model in the new community site where you could build teams. So instead of having to map everything to individual accounts, you could have a team for your company. You could have a couple of teams inside of your company, and you could use those for these roles. So it'd be a lot easier to kind of manage the relationships that actually happen around websites. But let's take a little bit more of a look at what this instances stuff would do. If I were to click into this thing, I would get some controls that would obviously look better than this. These are just cocktail napkin wireframes, guys. But you can see we've got, when this thing was made, what version of the core it's running. So if you think back to that diagram I showed before, we would lock the core down. You would not be able to get to that. If you wanted to change files, you'd be changing them in a code repo, and you would only be able to change things that were in the, that were overrides, add-ons, packages, extensions, stuff you should change. You can point to different repos for that. You could clone this instance. So, hey, let's take a copy of the live site and call it a stage. You can take a backup. This would give us a spot to apply upgrades as well. So now we know what version of the core you're running, and we've got a spot where we can start to manage some of the complexity that has emerged over the years around the upgrade paths, right? Like if you're on 7 something, you have to upgrade to 7.4 before you can upgrade to 8.1, and then from 8.1 you can go. Well, we would be able to control that from here, right? We'd be able to say, oh, you're on such and such version. You can upgrade from here, you can upgrade from there, but that's it. We would also, since we know what these different instances are used for, we would also be able to keep you from doing things like running an upgrade on your live site, right? I've got this message, yo, dude, don't run an upgrade here. Clone the instance and make a test first. And perhaps we would let you do that, but we would at least have a spot to kind of make it easy to do the right thing. Yeah, I guess what we would consider the right thing. If this was not the live instance, this button wouldn't be grayed out. You could make this live. So you could absolutely take a snapshot of or clone your live site, run the upgrade, test that it works while it's, just at a kind of a staging URL. And when you like it, come in here and click a make live button, and we would just map your domain to be pointing to the new instance instead of the old one. And of course you can delete. So that's what happens when you click in to one of these live instances, and you can make different instances and really use this as a system for managing your project as a whole. We've also been talking about, look, there's got to be a way that we can pack this up and make this work on a local install. Everybody here works does development locally. No one's like connecting to a server and developing on a server. So I know in the last meeting we had about this, we left that with like, well, we need to figure out a way that we can pack something up but still not let them mess around in the core. So that is kind of on our to-do list. But really at this point, I want to ask everybody else, and I expect this is probably going to be a conversation that goes over days and days in the forums, and there's some thoughtful back and forth. But does this look appealing? Like, is this something that would help you guys? I know in some of the reviews that I've seen of concrete5 in the the Cat Terror reviews that we've been promoting a little bit, this kind of stuff has come up. Right? I've seen people say, "Oh, it's it's a great, easy to use interface. Like I like his website. It's hard to do DevOps. Like I don't know how to move sites around or manage the DevOps process." And that really got us thinking. Like, well, we've always seen ourselves as just a content management system. And how you host it, like, is that really our problem? But duh, yeah, of course it is. Like you guys need websites. You don't just need a CMS. So does this look like an appealing solution? What is it that we're not thinking of? What have we totally spaced? I know we need to detail out a migration process. Like I'm sure there are kind of big probably need to think about that issues. I'd love to hear about them now as we architect this thing. And really fundamentally, what would it take to make you want to host your sites with us? We're looking at partnership programs and certification built in here. Like as you think back to these kind of roles, I can imagine a site owner coming, getting all of this and feeling pretty intimidated by it, and then being able to find help here, and that going to a list of certified folks. I can imagine setting this up so as a company, if you start setting up multiple accounts here, you start to get a discount over time. So being a partner has some real value, and you can start, you can charge your clients, you pay us, then you're the site owner, and there can be plenty of margin for everybody. But what are we not thinking of here? And how can you help us help you? Boom. That's what I have to say on this. So, Corvin, Andy, I don't know if did I cover this pretty well? I know you guys didn't get to see this presentation before I made it feverishly last night. Did I say anything wrong, or do you have anything to add?
I didn't hear you say anything wrong. Seems like it covered the points that I think are, important for us to not leave out, and yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
There were a couple questions that I answered a little bit, but there were a couple questions about containerization. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I'm going to let you speak to that.
Okay. So at this point, we're definitely thinking about containerizing this stuff just because it makes it super easy to do things like package it up and copy it, and maybe even spin up, stages and stuff like that. So that's definitely something that we're looking at. And the second question was along the same lines. When we're doing a backup or a clone of an instance, when we're actually creating a new stage, are we copying the database or is it just the code? And the answer to that is, we're copying everything. It's going to be essentially a whole new site. So if you have a stage and you were to, maybe promote that to live, we would want the entirety of that stage to just overtake whatever was live. So, caching, files, database, and everything will be copied over and be a distinct instance.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, from my perspective, this has to be dead simple. It has to be something that is easy enough that the site owner gets it and doesn't have to understand most of it, and it'll just work. So a backup and restore button, just as you're saying, Corvin, has to actually back up and restore. It can't come with any like, oh, actually, we're just restoring part of it because we're developers. On the other hand, it has to be powerful enough that that shops want to use it, and it's not this is I can do better myself. I think that with the expertise that we've developed with packing these things up in Docker containers and the other stuff that's not showing up in these diagrams at all, the logging, the performance, I think we can bring something to the table here that is valuable. So help us do that.
We had one more question from Masuva. He's asking, what about the portability of a site? Are we going to have features for dumping out a site and taking it to a different hosting company or whatever it might be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, fundamentally, it's an open source product, and the last thing that we want to do is, rope a client into working with us that isn't finding benefit in working with us. Strategically, that has always been true and will always remain true. And that's why you see that, we have enterprise extensions to Concrete5, but we don't have here's the enterprise version that's super good, and the open source one's kind of junk now. We've resisted that temptation for more than a decade, so I think strategically we've got the high ground there. Practically, we have to as well, because as I mentioned before, Andy wants the site working on his laptop, so when he's on a plane, he can code on it. So that means there's got to be a simple way that you can spit out the database dump, the files, the core with the extensions, and be like, here you go, here's the whole site. And there also has to be a simple way that you could then fold that back in. I don't think it's actually that hard. You just keep using GitHub. Yes, I guess there's two different flavors of yes.
Yeah, just to speak to the Git portion of that, I think part of what we're doing with this, powering it out of a centralized repo that is managed and controlled by, the person who's hosting the content, we don't really have to export that bit. We'll definitely have ability to export the database and files and stuff like that. But for the source code, since it's all in Git, you guys own that, and we're just taking a copy. So, yeah,
that's right. And we're really looking to fit what we're doing into what works as much as possible. When this idea was first being bantied around, Andy and I were just like, oh, well, we'll just run our own Git server, and you'll just get a repo as part of setting this up. And Corvin immediately pushed back. I was like, that's awful. I would never want to do that. I already have an account on GitHub or Bitbucket or whatever, and I'm a developer. I know what I'm doing. I don't want to use your flavor of code management. I was like, yep, that sounds fair. So please really do push back on us with this stuff. We want to build something here that is valuable to you, and we're committed to doing it, but we need you to tell us how to make it sexy.
Sweet,
awesome. That's all I have to talk about this week. I'm hoping that this spurs a fair amount of discussion, so I don't want to jazz hands with any other news. I'm going to leave it with this. I'm going to go make a forum thread and link to this video at the starting point of my little demo here. And I think it's time to get back to work, right, boys?
Sweet. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us again on the Concrete5 Town Hall. Last thing to say, the next one's going to be November 5th. So join us then. Keep an eye out for our event, and we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.